Hello, welcome to Only for Your Ears, and welcome to episode number 7, Thumbelina, which I am going to rename as Maya's Miracle. The structure will be the same, starting off with a summary and the highlighted points, then a critical review talking about how the story could potentially play in today's society, and then the trigger points. Let's begin. Maya's Miracle. The story of Thumbelina starts with a woman who wants a child. She does not know where to find one, so she goes to a witch who gives her a seed. The woman plants the seed and a tulip sprouts. She kisses the tulip and it opens up, presenting a small girl inside named Thumbelina or Tiny. The woman gives her a walnut shell for a bed, violet petals for a mattress, and a rose petal as an eiderdown. She fills a soup plate with water, and Thumbelina floats on a tulip petal. Once upon a time, there was a woman who couldn't stay pregnant, and she was very sad about that. Everything changed on the day she welcomed an old woman into her home. I digress. This woman happened to be a witch. This adds a magical and spiritual component to this fairy tale. When she was going away, she gave the woman a unique, rare gift. I digress. This reminds me of when someone is going away on a long journey and someone just wants to give them a good luck charm. It was a seed that hid a special secret. After a while, the seed became a flower, and then a small girl, as small as a thumb, came out. The woman named her Thumbelina. Even though she was small, Thumbelina was very curious, and one day she started investigating the magical world around her. I digress. There was an evil frog that approached her, and the evil frog represents challenge and a need for Thumbelina to test her intuition and wisdom. Thumbelina did not want to spend her life next to that frog. He was so awful. So she ran away into the woods. She was kind, and it did not take long before the forest animals started to love her. I digress. The frog again is a test for Thumbelina to know what she wants. And she's very clear that's why she escapes the evil, ugly creature. And her tendency quickly helps the animals on her journey. This illustrates her compassionate side. While she was on the run from the frog, a mouse welcomed her into her home. She stayed there until Mr. Mole did not want to marry her. I digress. When Mr. Mole didn't want to marry her, this was the universe saying, your real twin flame is out there waiting for you. Just don't give up. This was the reason. This was reason enough for her to run away again. And so she spent some time in the forest. It wasn't easy to run away, but she was kind hearted and helped everyone, so everyone helped her. She helped a swallow to heal her wing, so they became inseparable while they were traveling together. Thumbelina met a nice boy, a nice, kind boy, and finally fell in love with him. She couldn't believe that a boy her height existed and that she wasn't the only one. I digress. This is just to emphasize, even if you feel you're too short, too tall, and fat, there's still someone there that's out there perfect for you. This is the power of manifestation. She met him while he was sitting on a flower in a garden that he ruled. He was a king there and fell in love with Thumbelina and changed her name to Maya. What a beautiful, sweet story. Let's continue with a critical review. Okay, and how it plays in today's society. Well, Thumbelina is a magical fairy tale that brings not one but two miracles to the women running through this narrative. I believe this tale talks about the touching and experiencing the reality of one's dreams. Let's begin with some sentences that I've used to help frame my critical review. Number one, this woman happened to be a witch. This adds a magical and spiritual component to this fairy tale. When she was going away, she gave the woman a unique and rare gift. Yes, the gift was to be unwrapped by the first woman who couldn't have a child. This reminds me of the line in Forrest Gump when the mother says, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know which one you're going to choose." But in this case, the seed was chosen by the old woman, the witch. When you adopt a child, for example, you don't know who this child is. Not really. It's just like a box of chocolates. You don't know what's going to be inside that chocolate until you bite into it, until you adopt the child. You just have to go with the flow and adapt. Yes, adapt to the child's needs. The child doesn't adapt to the parents' needs. The parents have to adapt to the child's needs. If the child turns out to be a perfect match without the parents having to do much work, then you're lucky. This woman had no idea Thumbelina would be such a magical girl with a beautiful soul. The magic of how Thumbelina met her twin flame was mysterious. Her adventurous being with her insightful knowing of who she wanted to fall in love with. Who she wanted to fall in love with. I have heard of some difficult to believe pregnancies that have been brought about through the Christian faith and herbal mixtures. For example, there was a couple from Eastern Europe who attended my church. They had relentlessly tried to get pregnant. The woman was in her mid-30s, so the time was ticking away. They had tried every medical intervention known to man, but no luck. Then one of the women elders took her to a herbalist, not a witch doctor, just a simple herbalist. Well, the result is this woman became pregnant with her first and only child. The herbs cleansed her fallopian tubes, healed the reproductive area. However, she confessed she wouldn't want to do this again. She said the pain was excruciating and was beyond what she expected. In various cultures, like in the West Indies, people practice obeah, which is a form of witchcraft, voodoo, and witches have long been used to encourage pregnancies when it seemed impossible. The evil frog in second sentence, the evil frog represents the challenge and a need for Thumbelina to test her intuition and wisdom. Thumbelina is did not want to spend her life next to that frog, so she ran away into the woods. This is so typical. When a fresh spirit comes into a new environment, a lot of energy vampires want a piece of you and want to consume who you are. Everybody wants you to meet their son or marry themselves. Then they get offended if you don't want to take their bait. The frog just wanted to use her for his own resources. This reminds me of JFK, John F. Kennedy, and his wife Jackie. JFK's popularity was definitely enhanced by Jackie Kennedy, who had enormous charisma to match her husband's. But unfortunately, even though they looked like the perfect power couple in today's society. They probably did. But her husband had an insatiable appetite for sex. He was brazenly unfaithful to her. And even though he respected her and liked her and found her to be so useful, he did not really, I don't believe, really love her, even though he did suffer from Addison's disease, which is a terrible crippling back problem. And he said that if he didn't have sex once a day, he would have a really bad headache. So that was part of his excuse, but I still feel that he used Jackie Kennedy. They probably used each other. I guess that's what power couples do anyway. The next one is Bill Clinton. Well, he was just as bad as Bill Clinton. I think Bill Clinton was was worse actually. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton has never really been in love with Hillary Clinton, but he respected her, and in actual fact, it's been said that he adores her, which is near to being I love you, but not being in love with her. He was attracted to her energy, enormous energy, and enormous power. The perfect power couple. These two men got married to these women for their own self interest. The intuition part reminds me of when Hillary Clinton, who was an intern at a law firm in DC, she was asked to be part of the prosecuting team against Richard Nixon. She later said about the former president that she wasn't interested in what he said, but she was interested in what he didn't say. And this captivated her. Her intuition knew more. So she designed questions around the gaps in his testimony. And this is how the prosecuting team impeached Richard Nixon. They brought him down and he had to step down. It was a known fact in DC that Nixon detested, I mean, literally detested Hillary Clinton. And when Capitol Hill knew the Clintons were coming to the White House, heads started to roll because they knew that Hillary Clinton knew where the bodies were buried. Her intuition wielded enormous power. Number 3, this is just to emphasize, even if you feel you're too short, too tall, too fat, there is still someone out there that's perfect for you. This reminds me of Simone Biles, the famous black gymnast who's under 5 foot. She's tiny, tiny as a small pint of beer. And she's married to her dream husband. She just got married the other day to their NFL football player. And he's a giant. He's like about 6'5", 6'7". So she's really tiny, just like Thumbelina. And she has an incredible husband, incredibly tall husband. Here, this tiny dynamo of a gymnast who was adopted by her grandmother and took interest in gymnastics to daycare center, is the only gymnast in American history that has been able to win 4 gold medals in one Olympic period. And she's been amazing. And she's been able to write her own ticket to success anywhere she wants to go in the world. And she was tiny, just like Thumbelina, but amazing, just like Thumbelina. Okay, let's take a look at the trigger points. The trigger points, what are trigger points? Trigger points are memories, I would say memories or flashbacks of events, traumatic events that took place in the past, emotionally or psychologically or physically, that makes you feel as though you have to go back to the past, back to the old person that you were, because you can't fight the trigger. You can't overcome the problem. Well, you've already overcome some of the problems, but a trigger acts as though you need to go back. You need to go back. You need to heal. Well, yes, you do need to heal it, continue healing, but that's the negative part of healing. The triggers are the negative part. The positive part of healing is when you're able to say, I know that's a trigger. I'm going to keep continue moving forward in spite of being triggered. Now, for a long time, people have been threatened by triggers and they have gone back. But in some cases, and more cases than others, people have been able to move forward, which is a good thing. Let's take a look at what triggered me. Once upon a time, there was a woman who couldn't stay pregnant, and she was very sad about that. Everything changed on the day she welcomed an old woman into her home. I digress. The woman happened to be a witch. This adds a magical and spiritual component to the fairy tale. This really triggered me in a negative way, the negative trigger, because my parents were from Jamaica and my father, I must point this out, my father dabbled in witchcraft and I didn't like it. And I think it really it affected the whole family in a way. It was like a negative karma that we experienced. If you don't know what you're doing, and I believe that my dad didn't know what he was doing, but he was desperate. He was absolutely desperate because he wanted to get out of a marriage to a narcissistic person, and he'd do anything. And this is why he dabbled in witchcraft, because he would just do anything, even if he didn't know what he was doing, which is even worse. I believe that witchcraft can be used for good or evil. I think spells, prayer, chants, all of these things, even people that don't have any kind of faith or religion, when you speak something forward and you speak it with earnest sincerity and belief, then of course it will come true. Eventually it will come true. If it's really meant for you, it will come true. A question came up for me during writing this paragraph. What's the difference between prayer, religion, and spells, which are usually used in witchcraft, etc.? Well, from Google, it states that prayer is based on religion, teachings, teachings, philosophy, spiritual consciousness, and on and on and on. Prayer is to speak, asking for mercy in uncertain times, like good actions and obedience to scripture and spiritual laws, depending on your practice, garner good karma. Or, in other words, not karma necessarily, that's more Buddhism, but blessings and mercy. Prayer and with negative intentions is basically considered sin. Bad deeds, thoughts, actions allowed to fester without repentance, for example, produce negative, negative blessings, no, sin, just basically sin. Karma is basically the fortune, destiny, or the sum of unfortunate consequences from a past life that's believed through Buddhism. Blessings usually come out of prayer, Christianity, and karma is a terminology that comes from Buddhism. But all in all, I do believe in prayer. I believe in people's having the right to practice whatever type of spiritual practice that they feel that works for them, because it's talking about a faith and self-belief. And I think this is important. I have respect for it, even if I don't practice their particular spiritual practice. The next one is about a woman that I met in Scandinavia. I'd say Scandinavia, very close to Scandinavia. And she was part of my group when I was still practicing Buddhism. I practice it in the United States and I continue to practice it in Scandinavia, even though I come traditionally from a Catholic family. All right. So I met this woman. She was like a counselor to me. And the first time she met me, she said, "We're so alike." And I was in shock when she said, "We're so alike." I couldn't believe it. How could I possibly be so like this very white, very petite, and very beautiful looking woman who was a model? She said, "We're so alike." And I couldn't understand it. And then she said, "I've had 7 pregnancies." And I looked at her shocked because she was so small. And she said, "Yes, I've had 7 miscarriages." Well, then she went on to tell me that she had went to a clairvoyant through a friend of hers, and the clairvoyant told her straight to her face that, you know, I, I, I can see straight through you. You have no boundaries. You don't know how to protect yourself. That's the biggest problem that you have. And then when she said that, I realized I also had the same problem. She also spoke about a situation because she was such an empath like me, that sometimes she'd be on the phone helping people, counseling them. And she'd say to them, "Look, I have to stop now because I can feel the baby moving and it feels as though I'm going to have a miscarriage." And they would ignore her. It's almost as though, "I don't see you, I don't hear you. You have no boundaries anyway, and I've cut through your boundaries, and so I don't care." And so she'd go on to have a miscarriage 6, 7, and continued. Well, one day, and this reminded me of myself too, because I've had the same situation. And especially if you were raised with a narcissistic parent, you have no boundaries because they cut across the boundaries. They don't regard you anyway. You're not important to them. You're only important to them for what they can use you for. So she continued to tell me her story, and she was chanting, she was praying, and she wondered why she kept on losing the babies. And the answer was is that because she did not accept herself, she could not accept the baby that was growing inside of her. And so these babies, all 7 of them, would abort. Or she was pregnant with baby number 8. And it was in the 6th or 7th month. And she felt the movement in her stomach, just like she was going to have a miscarriage. And she said to her husband, she goes, "It's time, we have to go to the hospital." And she thought it was another miscarriage. She'd prayed and prayed and prayed, but maybe it wasn't supposed to be, she thought. She was at the hospital. The gynecologist, a male gynecologist, leaned over as they were wheeling her into the operating theatre. And the midwife was right next to him. And he said to the midwife, "Get ready for miscarriage number 8." Well, she screamed out. When I said to you, a spell, a prayer is like a speaking forth of your desire and a belief and faith. She screamed out so hard. She said, "This baby, I'm keeping. I'm not losing it. I'm not losing this child." Well, when she told me that, my face wasn't dry. I mean, I was just crying. I couldn't believe what she had been through. Well, it's a happy ending. She had baby number 8 and baby number 9, and they are two beautiful, stunning, in their mid-20s, half Japanese, white, and mixed with American. So they are gorgeous. This was her dream. She spoke forth with with all the prayer she did, with all the chanting that she did. She spoke forth and she believed. The last one, talking about boundaries, triggers. Talking about boundaries. Well, the number 2, I just wanted to say I've reconciled the fact that I probably would have been a good parent. A lot of people said that I would have been a great mother. I decided not to be a mother, a parent. I decided not to get married either because of my family experience. But as far as the triggers, I don't get triggered by the fact that I don't have children. I'm a great, great, great mother to domestic animals, which I absolutely love. So I'm quite happy with that. So negative, positive triggers, and I've reconciled it. I've been able to transmute it. The last one is really talking about my boundaries. Being able to develop boundaries, being able to say no when you really mean no, and have people recognize it. No. It's been interesting. It's been difficult, but it's been interesting. I've been able to create boundaries for myself. And the way that I've been able to do it is instead of, sometimes I say no, and sometimes I just say to myself, you know what, I'm going to put myself first. I'm not going to do that extra shift, that extra volunteer shift. I could do it, but I'll just say I can't do it today. Myself first. I need to rest myself first. I was sick with Bell palsy 3 weeks ago, and I listened that I needed to put myself first. I needed to rest and I needed to take care of myself. Whenever you are putting yourself first, eating good food and making sure that you keep your energy within yourself, you keep your cup full, and you allow the overflow of the water that's coming out of the cup. You give that to people, but you don't give them the contents of your cup. That's actually loving yourself. That's actually self-love. When you put yourself first, when you eat well, when you make sure you get rest, when you can say to someone, look, no, thank you, or you know what, I'm going to put myself first, they'll understand, and they really, really will. Well, we've reached the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't hesitate to give me a thumbs up. It'd be very welcome. And also, if you wanted to subscribe, please do so as well. None of these actions cost a penny, so that's good. So I welcome them if you can. Now I'm going to leave with one of my typical phrases is that healing is a lifelong lesson, blessing, and gift that we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Healing is a lifelong lesson, gift, and blessing that we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Take care and see you next time. Bye bye.